let's see if this is better. Let's see if this is working now. Trying to get back on here. Again, I just tested my audio and it wasn't coming through. So I'm trying a new one here. We're trying to see if we got this working. Let's take a look. Let's see if things are going okay. I'm hoping. I'm going to check it out here. Just listen to myself for a second and make sure it's working. Let's see. So how are we doing? Are we getting it going? It says my health is excellent. Let me see if I can hear myself. How are we doing? All right, now we're looking good. Hello, my people. Okay, let's try this again. The first attempt didn't work too well. We're good now. So yeah, I had audio issues. I don't know why. No, we don't. So we're good. Hello. There we go. Okay, it's nice to have a little love in the chat here. What's going on, my people? So yeah, the point of today is to talk about what it's like to be an international student, look a little bit at some of the pros and cons. I've been taking some notes, writing some things down here. I want to share them with you guys. Last week, I was talking about my university experience, and my internet was god-awful, and then it shut down on me, so it didn't even record the last part of the live stream, so I kind of wanted to pick up where I left off there. And also wanted to share this experience, because like, if you're contemplating studying abroad, then it's like nice to maybe hear, what it's like to be an international student, what it's like to be sort of the minority in another country. And I think that it will be a very different experience from what you might be used to. I mean, if you think about your current experience in school, you are probably not an international student in school. Maybe you are, but most people watching here are probably studying in school in the same place they were like born. So you're kind of just one of many people, but then when you go abroad, you become one of few people. And that was my experience when I studied at Villarreal. Like, I was one of the only gringos in that institution. I think that when I was there, I probably saw 3 or 4 other foreigners in the time I was there. There was this one guy who I knew. What's up, Joaquin? Yeah, Mr. Vitoski, by the way, I said hi in the chat, but hello, formally. So in those cases, right, like I was one of the only foreigners in the school, this other guy was a teacher that I knew. I actually worked with that guy. So it was funny when we saw each other there for the first time, we were like, what's up, you're here. And that kind of brings me to like one of my first pros that I want to talk about is like the fact that you are this minority, the fact that you are not the majority of people is kind of an awesome thing. Okay, it's kind of sweet, and I want to explain why. So, first of all, you got to understand that like by being an international student, you're going to be kind of an anomaly, right? You're going to stand out. People are going to look at you. People are going to go, I wonder what that person is. Where are they from? Like, they're not going to know exactly what to make of you at first, and that makes you an interesting person by default. That's kind of cool. Like, that works to your advantage in a few different ways. For one, I mean, I'll just say it straight up. In the dating game, people, that's a plus. Okay, being exotic is kind of a plus. All right, being a little different from the rest is interesting. It's a little easier to meet some people, and it also translates to like more interest in you, right? Because people look at you and go, I wonder what's up with this person. I wonder what their story is. How did they get here? And that is actually really useful because it helps you make friends. It helps you connect with people. If you're an international student in let's say a university in the United States, right? You're going to get there. You're going to feel a little out of place, but there's other people probably from the same regions or areas as you. So you might be able to just click right off the bat with people from your own community, right? Let's say you join, for example, a Latin American Student Association, which there's one of those in just about every university in the States. Well, right there, you're going to be able to connect really quick with people that are closer to you, I guess more similar to you, and that will allow you to make some friends right away. But even if you don't do that, let's say you go in with the mentality of like, I don't want to just be friends with other Latino students. I want to make friends from this culture or other cultures. You're also going to have the ease of doing that because there's going to be other international students who are looking for the same thing. And so you're going to make those connections really quickly. Locals will also want to sort of adopt you as friends. There's a lot of people that part of the reason they're at university also is to learn about other cultures and to meet people from other cultures. So you'll find that there's a lot of local people that are interested in becoming friends with you or getting to know you. And that's something that, one of the things that got cut off last week that I wanted to say, big shout out to La Buena Onda. Like my group of friends from university, that was super cool. Cause like the first semester, I didn't like settle in right away with any group of people, but as I started working with some people and started doing some projects and assignments with people, I started getting into this group of friends here, and there were about 6 of us or 7 of us, something like that. And the group, got very close over the years, and we became sort of the friend group, right? We always would do our assignments together, always work on our projects together. We even got together after classes sometimes to have some food. I just saw them not too long ago at my place. So these are people who I've known now for more than 5 years, since that's how long it took me to study here. And they're still my friends today, people that I'll, happily get together with and have lunch with or talk to over the week and stuff. So that's something that you're going to get as an international student. You're going to find that it's a little easier to make friends than you might think. And while I feel like some people think that, you're going to be an international student, you're going to feel a little lonely, a little excluded. The reality is you're not going to be excluded. You're going to be included in a lot of things. And that's really cool. While you might feel a little lonely, that kind of brings me to the first con that I wanted to talk about was like the distance. There is how would I put this? I don't know if I would call this necessarily a con or a disadvantage, but there is this feeling of, wow, I'm far away from home, right? I'm far away. I don't have my family around. Your friends from before, they're going to leave. They're going to be gone out of your life. A lot of them. Okay. Won't lie. And that's a normal part of life. You even in the US, you have friends from high school and you guys go to different colleges and you drift apart a little bit. Maybe some really good ones will stick with you for a long time, but I'll be honest, you're going to lose touch a little bit with some of your old friends. You're going to lose some of that bond that you've had with people, because at the end of the day, you do start to surround yourself with your new life. You don't have the luxury of constantly being in touch and being on the phone with friends. I mean, if you can't go out and hang out with those people, eventually you're going to contact them a little less frequently. You're going to reach out a little less, and little by little you kind of drift apart. And there's people in my life that, super close buddies from like high school that I don't really talk too much anymore. I should be better about that. Part of that's on me, but part of it is the distance. The distance between you and those people is going to mean that you have to focus more on the people around you, not the people that are 4,000 miles away in the other country. So that's something to keep in mind as you embark on that journey of studying abroad. Like, you're going to make new friends, but you might lose some other ones. That's one of the cons that I see out there, and it's something that I think is fair to say. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I think it's a normal part of life. I think that as I've lived, you realize you do make new friends as you go through life, and some sort of drop out, and it's almost like a football team, like 10 years after the team you fell in love with is different. There's different players, new people, new faces, new coaches, but like, it's still the same team. It's still your team. And so I feel like the positives outweigh the negatives when we talk about making friends and that kind of bond that you form with people. Looking at my list here. So I want to continue down the con road and talk about a complex topic here, which is stereotypes. All right. As an international student, you will be faced with some stereotypes. I don't care what you do. I don't care who you are, where you're from. There are going to be some stereotypes that will affect you. And even when those stereotypes are kind of more positive, they can still be a little bit negative for you. And I can give plenty of clear examples of that in my experience here. So I have the benefit, and I openly acknowledge this benefit, of being a gringo in Peru. That comes with a lot of positive associations. Generally speaking in this country, if you're an American, you're a European foreigner, people look at you positively, but that positivity comes from assumptions, right? So what do they assume? They typically assume that I must be rich because I'm a gringo in Peru, right? Can't be poor in Peru. If they had seen my bank account statements in like 2013, they would have had a very different idea. But people just kind of assume that you have a lot of money, which isn't much of a problem, but at the same time, there's that sort of pressure on you in a way. Like, do I have to live up to this expectation? And if I do, am I like fulfilling a stereotype? And is that what I want to do? But I don't want to like be poor just to be not a stereotype. Like, it puts you in a weird position. Similarly, there's other positive perceptions about Americans in Peru that typically will manifest themselves. And for me, I feel like the money thing is the number one thing, but then also a little bit of like, maybe our professionalism kind of comes through. There's an expectation on Americans to sort of be punctual and do these things that maybe you don't normally see in the culture here as often. And I also found that would manifest itself in classes. Like it was weird. As one of the only Americans in my program was bilingual, right? I had English courses and I had Spanish courses. The Spanish courses would typically be about the Peruvian curriculum or like psychology and what have you, while the English courses were often more about teaching and actually how to teach English. And so I had this mix of classes in two different languages. I noticed an interesting trend. My grades would be worse in the classes that were English-based, and they would be better in the classes that were Spanish-based. I started to question this, like, why would my grades fluctuate? And most notably, why would they go in the opposite direction of what you would expect, right? You would expect that your grades in English courses, if you're a native English speaker, would be better, right? And your grades in Spanish would probably be worse. You guys, if you go travel abroad, and study abroad, maybe you would take a Spanish course and you would think, well, I should ace the Spanish course because like I'm a native Spanish speaker. But what the weird thing that happens is the teachers sort of project this stereotype onto you that you should be good at this, right? So what I noticed was I got graded harder when it was English. It was like the teachers, I don't know if they wanted to challenge me or if they just expected me to be awesome and do everything perfectly. But the problem with that is like, we're not testing my English ability in class. We're testing my knowledge and understanding of these complex concepts. It's not about, can I speak the language? It's about, do I understand the material? And even though I think I really did understand the material and I demonstrated that really well, I had this sort of weird grade, inversion. So teachers on the flip side, when I got into a class that was in Spanish, they kind of took it easy on me. They wouldn't challenge me as much, or they would always be like, wow, your Spanish is so good, Mr. Meaton, you're so nice. And they would kind of give me extra points just for speaking good Spanish and doing a decent job in the course. I feel like my grades were inflated in Spanish and then deflated in English because they had this higher expectation of me. So I think the same thing could happen to you as an international student going abroad. You would have some of these expectations that people already have even subconsciously, and they'll come out in these weird ways. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. It's just something that you should be aware of. And that trickles into other aspects of the class. Like anytime, I swear, anytime something came up related to the United States, I was expected to give my opinion on it. I was expected to speak out about it. And when you study, a lot of the stuff you're reading is from American authors. So pretty much all the time they were asking me to give my take on these things. And, there's days in class where you're just like, I don't really feel like participating today. Can I just chill? Can I just not? And they would always make me say something. I always had to comment on whatever the news was coming out of the States or whatever the American author. And teachers would throw out these like ideas about why they think the Americans think this way or feel this way. And I'm expected to give my take on it as if I represent an entire country. Like I'm one of 330 million Americans or so. I'm definitely not able to speak on behalf of an entire population, but that's sort of what was expected of me. So I guarantee if you were in a class and something about Peru comes up, they're going to be on you. They're going to be like, hey, tell us what you think. And you're going to be like, oh, do I have to? Do I have to do this? Yeah, I do. Okay. Sometimes it do be like that. So I think if you now addressing possibly stereotypes that you might have to face, obviously there are some people with less than positive perceptions of Latinos. But I will say this, that when you go to a university in the United States, it's a very different environment. It's not the typical kind of, I don't know. I think even if you go to a small town university, you'd find that it's much more open and accepting of international people than you would realize. I have a friend who studied at a community college in North Carolina, and she told me about that, how like in the neighborhood, in the area, sometimes she would get some dirty looks and stuff, but on campus she felt good and she didn't have that problem. So I think that if you're living on campus, if you're staying with open-minded people at a university, you don't have to worry much about being discriminated against or being excluded because of being a Latino or whatever you are. If you're somebody who's not Latino watching this, and I'm just saying Latinos because I know a lot of Peruvians are watching this, but that's my point. You don't have to sweat that sort of discrimination thing, because really universities are very open-minded, very progressive about that stuff, and I don't think it's an issue. I certainly never felt excluded or discriminated against, even though I know that I come in with more positive than negative perceptions. Overall was good. So that would be like my other con, I guess, is stereotypes, or something you're going to have to deal with. Even if they're positive, you still have to kind of deal with them. So don't let it bother you. Pros, that gives you an interesting perspective. Like you as an international student have a unique perspective on everything, really. Like the class, the contents, and that perspective is welcome in those spaces. So even though it can be a little annoying when people are constantly asking you to give your take on things, your take is also valued, and that's a positive, right? That people want to hear what you have to say about something, and your international perspective is going to give you a different set of eyes when you look at issues. I feel, for example, that I can objectively analyze Peruvian culture better than a lot of Peruvians can, because I'm not from here. I didn't grow up here. I grew up in a totally different environment. So I'm seeing it from a colder, more objective perspective. Now that I've spent a lot of time here, I think I've analyzed it quite a lot. And I think the same is true of my home country. I have a better perspective on the United States because I have lived abroad. And that enriched my understanding of a lot of the topics that we discussed. I think I was able to analyze where that information was coming from the US, and analyze it better because I had this different perspective of being an international student. I think if I had just studied in the States, I probably wouldn't have had that same diversity of perspectives, because I had two different ways to look at things. I had the Peruvian way and the American way, and that duality was useful. I could think about my experiences in Peru, think about what I saw in my classrooms, think about what I experienced as an American student, and compare those two things and think about, okay, as a student, I lived through this. This is what I experienced. As a teacher in Peru, I've seen what students experience here, and it's quite different. So that, I think, is important. It's valuable, and it's something that you can only get by going abroad. So that's one of the big reasons I encourage people to do it, is you get that broadened perspective that most other people will not have. And that's going to be useful for you throughout your life. I think just the way you see the world, the way you understand things is going to get better. It's something I talked about in one of our early videos where we talked about, how you change when you study abroad. And that's one of the things that I feel is absolutely true. You change your perspective on things, and it becomes a more nuanced, a more objective perspective in a lot of ways, because you're seeing things from two different angles. If you only see things from one direction, you're not going to have the same perspective. So that's a plus. So yeah, we've talked about, you're a little more exotic, you're a more interesting person, it's a little easier to make friends, and so you're also gonna have this weird perspective. I think that's a positive. Con that I think is worth talking about, but could also fall into the pros category, is your language barrier. Now, obviously, if you study abroad, you're probably going to study in another language that's not yours. Maybe you go to Spain and you study in Spanish, and that's not a big deal. But if you study in the States or Europe and most places, you're going to study in English. And that will create a bit of a language barrier that can be a little difficult at first. I think that for a lot of people, there's an adjustment at the beginning. I know there was for me. When I started studying in Peru, I had already been living here for about 4 or 5 years. So I had my Spanish was really good, but it also wasn't flawless, and it wasn't, how would I say this? It wasn't as broad, vocabularily speaking, right? So studying here in Spanish kind of challenged me, especially in the first few semesters. And I had a couple of teachers that were not very tolerant of some of my writing mistakes. Like, I had a couple little errors in my writing and stuff, and they would knock me down a lot of points for that. And I even have one teacher straight up asked me, like, like she didn't realize I was a foreigner, so she was thinking that my Spanish should be perfect, and she kind of had this like negative view. And she one time asked me, like, where did you go to school? What kind of crappy school did you go to? And I was like, oh, thanks. But I will say this, like, the reason I say this could also be a pro is that you get better. Your language skills are going to go through the roof, my people. Let me tell you, like, I saw my Spanish greatly improve from studying abroad, and that's after I spent a lot of time here already, and had already, I think, gotten to a very advanced level in Spanish. So the benefit of that challenge is that it makes you better. I feel that people tell me now that my vocabulary is very good in Spanish, and I think a lot of that is because I studied here, and it gave me more opportunities to learn more technical terms and things that I wouldn't probably have learned by just conversing with people. Your conversational language is much more limited. So to have that opportunity to explore academics and practice using the language in that context expanded my understanding of the language, which also helps you out a lot in other ways. And I feel that it's made me better for that reason as well. So while there is this initial barrier, that you have to get over, this difficulty at the start, it does get better. It does, get easier. And as it gets easier, you're getting better at the language, and it stops being a problem. So it's only a problem, I would say, for a little while. And if your English is already really, really good, probably won't be much of an issue. But there is that, there is that little barrier. And I will say that, it's nice to have the opportunity to speak your native language with people. So you should still look for some people who speak Spanish and hang out with them and stuff, because it's your brain. It's how you think. It's how you function in a lot of ways. And it's good to keep that. I've always had American friends while I'm here in Peru. I've always had even some of my Peruvian friends, my best friends, are like people who speak English also, and we use both. And I think that that's nice, nice to have the opportunity to speak naturally, because no matter how good I get at Spanish, there's always going to be little things that just want to come out in English. And so it's nice to have that opportunity to speak with those people. So again, you got the opportunity as a foreign student to connect with people who come from the same background as you, and you can use that to have some balance in your life. So it doesn't have to just be a full 100% English experience. You can keep a little bit, maybe save like 20% for Spanish, and take a Spanish course and get like an easy credit, why not? Another negative that I think is worth pointing out that we need to talk about is cost. So money, people. We won't sugarcoat this. International students will spend more than their domestic counterparts to study abroad, and so there is a cost component to consider here when we talk about cons. It's more expensive to be an international student, probably. I say probably because there are some exceptions to that. There's definitely ways for you to spend less abroad than you would here in some circumstances. If you're looking at La Pacifico and they're putting you in the most expensive category because your family makes money, you probably could go to Germany, study for free, and just pay living expenses and be cheaper. You might be able to get really good scholarships in some places and pay less. Like there's opportunities for you to spend less, but in general, it's safe to say that you're going to spend more as an international student. And that's just the cost of doing business. You got to cover living expenses. A lot of your classmates are getting federal funding in the United States or from their local government, so they're not paying as much as you. If you're going to the States, you're going to pay out-of-state tuition for public universities. We're going to make a video on that soon, so make sure you're subscribed to hang out for that, because I want to tell you guys about how much it really costs to study in the U.S. I see a lot of misinformation out there on that. We got to clear that up. I touched on it a little bit when I did the how to study in the USA video, but I don't think I went fully into it, and I want to go into it in more detail. But an international student at a private university will spend the same as everybody else. But even then, those other students have access to grants and funding from the government that you aren't going to have. So there is a cost factor. You have to acknowledge that. Having said that, it is possible to minimize that. It is possible to reduce the negative impact on your family's finances. And I think that it's worth it, right? It's a good payoff if you do it. So I wouldn't let that stop me necessarily. I realize that for some people, some families, that is going to be an obstacle that you have to overcome. That might be the biggest con of trying to study abroad, is overcoming the cost. And if that's difficult for you, I get it, and I feel for you. We want to help make that easier for people. We're trying to hook people up with as many scholarships as possible. Every time I do a university episode, that's one of the first things I ask about is like, tell me about your scholarships. Let's break it down. How can we get people in here and reduce that cost barrier? But it is a real thing. You got to acknowledge it. So I would say that that's one of the bigger cons of studying abroad. Now, in my case, I was kind of lucky in that I didn't have to pay more than the locals because of the design of the program that I was in. So that was kind of nice because of it being this like semi-presencial thing. I didn't actually have to pay more than anybody else. So that was cool. But yeah, I also, wasn't living at home with my parents, for example, like a lot of my classmates were. So I have living expenses that I would have to take care of. So that is another con on the list. So I covered some of these other things. I don't know if you guys have any questions or anything you want to hear about in terms of like these pros and cons. If you got any ideas or anything bugging you, I think you're curious about. I think the another one that, again, I don't classify this into pro con sort of thing because I think it has both, is the cultural factor, right? You are going to enter a new culture with different codes, different social norms and rules, and that is both a pro and a con. Again, it's a con in the sense that you're going to have to adapt to a different environment. Like if you go to the United States, you better learn to be punctual. Okay? None of this crap where you just show up late and it's like no problem. That would drive me insane when I was at university here. Like you'd have people roll in an hour late, hour and a half, and then they would just beg the teacher, be like, yeah, don't mark me late, please. And it's like, dude, get your butt up. I'm here every day on time. Like I'm never late to this class. How come you can't be? That would drive me nuts. That's a little culture barrier thing that I will say that, despite my 12 years of living in Peru, I still can't get over that. I'm still a very punctual person. I believe it's like respectful for other people's time and it's what you should do. But, it's the kind of thing that you take time to get used to if you get used to it. And so there's going to be little cons and pros within each culture, right? You go to the States, you might find some things annoy you, but you might like some things. And so that's why I don't really classify this as one or the other. I just see it as a mixed bag. Some of these things are going to be, things that drive you insane. There might be some things that really drive you nuts. Another good example of a cultural difference, right, that kind of bugs me is a dating thing, right? It's a weird thing here where I've noticed in Peruvian culture, you have to sort of declare your intention to be with somebody. You have to like ask them if they want to be your boyfriend or girlfriend. And it's like you have to formalize it by asking that question to the person. And it's weird to me because in like the States, you don't really do that. Like you might talk about it at some point, but the most likely thing is like the girl or guy or whatever you're going out with is going to talk to one of their friends who's going to talk to one of your friends, and they're going to exchange the information that you're together. And then your friend is going to ask you, hey, are you together with this person? And you'll be like, yeah, I guess so. And then you'll tell your significant other that same day, like, hey, yeah, my friend was asking me about that. So I guess, yeah, we are, right? And they'll be like, yeah, I guess we are. And that's just how sort of organically happens. But like here, it's this formal declaration thing. So that's the kind of stuff that I think goes unspoken a lot when we talk about studying abroad. There's these cultural differences. Some of them are going to be little things that you'll probably get over. Some of them will be minor annoyances that will continue to stay with you. There might be some things that you hate. And then there's going to be stuff that you love and stuff that you think is great. And so ultimately, I think it comes down to doing some research, learning a little bit about the country, and thinking what kind of environment you want. For me, I think that most of the cultural differences are not so great as to be a problem. And I think a lot of times you'll find that more of them are positive than negative. Again, I go to positives. Here in Peru, I think Peruvians in general place a high value on friendship and socializing, and that makes it easier to make friends and go to parties and hang out with people and stuff. Like I found myself always having invitations to go do stuff with people after class. And, that's nice. It's nice to feel welcome and feel invited into the social environment here. And that's something that I find is very nice about the culture here. So are there some things that maybe I see as negative? Sure. But there's also things I see as positive. And I think they balance out at the end of the day. If you're pretty open-minded, they shouldn't be much of a problem for you. But there are going to be some things that, bug you. So be prepared for that. I would imagine you guys probably would feel a little bummed out about the food, even though our American food is like, we just take the best of every other country and eat it, you're going to probably miss some Peruvian food unless you like live in an area that has a lot of it. And even if you go to Miami and study in Miami and go to a Peruvian restaurant, it's not going to be quite the same. It's going to be just a little different. But that also makes it nice for when you get to go back. So you're going to go back home, visit your family, visit your friends, and eat all your food. And I do the same thing today, even though I have Taco Bell here. It's nice to just have one every 5 minutes and be able to pull in and get some hot, fresh Taco Bell in the United States without having to go to Yoke Plaza here. So, little things. So we got some cultural things, got some money things, got some like personal things. I think another big pro that's worth talking about is the educational quality when you go to study abroad. Now, this is one that's more of a con in my case, as I talked about last week. Some of the experiences in Villarreal were not that great. You, on the other hand, are probably going to go to a much nicer university abroad than you would here. And so that's going to be a big pro for you as an international student. Like, you're going to be at a nice campus, much bigger open space. In the United States, we have these big sprawling campuses where you can take long walks and go from building to building, and you get these very relaxing environments. When I was at University of Pittsburgh, it's like you're downtown, but it doesn't really feel like you're downtown. It feels like you're just in this campus bubble that's massive, and you got all these cool open spaces and gardens and stuff to hang out in. And I think that's awesome that you have these nice, comfortable spaces. Another big pro, if you're coming from Peru or coming from a developing country, security. It's nice to know that your stuff is relatively safe. Now, the U.S. has people that steal things, and there's crime and stuff too, but campuses are extremely secure. You don't have to worry about leaving your stuff out. I look back to when I taught English at la UTP, la Universidad Tecnológica del Perú. When I was there, it was like I was broke, and I just had the cheapest flip phone that you could get. It was like 100 soles or something. And I had class in the same classroom with like a 20-minute break in between the classes. I left my phone charging on my desk, went downstairs, grabbed a drink at the bodega, and then went back up, and it was gone. And I was like, man, somebody stole my cheap, stupid phone. It's not even worth hardly anything. And mind you, like, if you steal that at the university, that means you stole it from another student or a teacher. Like, no case is acceptable, but that in particular really irritated me. Like, that I can't just leave a thing on a desk for 10 minutes without it disappearing. You'll learn from that. But that's the kind of thing that you don't necessarily have to worry about so much in the States. You can be in the US or Europe and kind of leave your stuff. I mean, you should still keep an eye on your things. Don't be dumb, but it's not as likely that that's going to happen. So that's a plus. You got a little bit more security around you, a little bit of a safer environment. I know that there's tragedies that make the news and major events that you see in the news, but those are very rare occurrences at universities. For the most part, campuses are very safe. They typically have their own departments, even like the University of Pittsburgh Police Department is its whole thing. It's not just campus security. They're actual police, like they're a real department. So you have these like people there that are always looking out for your safety and trying to make sure that everything's cool. And there's usually services there to help you with those things. That's another thing too, I think that is a big pro of studying abroad is they support their international students a little more. You look at an environment like Peru, where if you're a student here domestically, you probably get some support from your university, but not a ton. And if you go abroad, they're going to put a lot of emphasis on helping you out as an international student. So you'll find that there are plenty of people who are dedicated to helping you, whether that's student organizations, there's international ambassadors who are international students themselves, maybe in their junior or senior year, and they make it their mission to help out the freshmen who just come in for their first year. So there's this whole network of people that's sort of ready to support you. And that's going to make your transition a lot easier. I think that's one of the nicest things that I've seen when I've interviewed these universities, how they have these teams dedicated to that, and they really try to make it easier for you to be an international student and not feel, lost abroad. And it's easy to feel that. Halloween Meacham. Yeah, that could be a good line. I think that could be good. Yeah, take that W and just turn that into something. I like that idea. Trying to think what other pros and cons. I've exhausted my list. I'm trying to brainstorm some more on the fly here, but I wrote down like 8 things, and I've talked about all those 8 things. I think another major pro that's worth talking about is just the fact that a foreign credential it goes farther in some ways. If you get a degree from an English-speaking country, it's going to open even more doors because other countries are going to agree on what those mean, you know? If you get a degree from Peru and you try to go do a master's abroad, you know, you probably can, but there's going to be some places that say, we're not sure about your program, or I don't know about this. If you get a degree in the States or in Europe or something, you can go do whatever you want anywhere after that. And that's a nice plus. Employers, if you come back to Peru and you want to get a job, they're going to look at that foreign degree and you're going to have no problem finding work, and you're going to get paid well because you not only have language skills, but you have this international experience, and that's going to help you go farther in your career here. So if you choose to come back to your native land, you have this bonus of having this thing that few other people in your country have. So you're automatically like kind of on top of the pool when job applications come in. And that's a big plus for you in the long term. It's something that I think carries a lot of weight that people should keep in mind. You know, I feel like even the same is true in the States. If I went to apply for a job in the States with my Peruvian degree, I think they would look at that as like a curiosity and interesting thing. They'd be like, oh, you went and studied in Peru, tell us more. And that automatically makes your profile more interesting to potential employers. You live in a globalized world. Like, this is the generation of globalization, remote work from anywhere. You're going to have that employability just because you've already had that international experience. So when employers look at you, they're going to be like, man, this guy can do it. I trust this person. I think they can be an international worker because they've already been an international student. So that's a big pro that's worth thinking about. If you're looking at your long-term career success, can't go wrong by studying abroad. I feel like another big pro that's worth pointing out is just the freedom that you have if you study in other places, to choose more courses. Universities abroad typically are more well-funded, especially if we're comparing to Peru. And they also have more opportunities for you, right, to explore different subject matters. Something, for example, again, going back to University of Pittsburgh, one of the people I interviewed mentioned that they teach like 21 languages, including lesser taught languages. So one of those was Quechua. Like, imagine thinking about that. Like, you could be a Peruvian student in the University of Pittsburgh and learn Quechua abroad. That's pretty cool that they even offer that there's even one person who can teach that, and they put that out there. I imagine they don't get a lot of students in that class, but they have it. You know, that's the cool thing. And you're going to have those opportunities to study things that you're interested in that you probably wouldn't get that chance to do here. You know, some of the universities here only have a handful of majors, right? Whereas you go to the States, some universities have over 50, over 100 majors. I mean, that's insane to think about. Like, you look at their list and it's just incredible. There's so many different things you can study, and you can sample a little bit of different things. You can, take a few courses from this one, a few courses from that one, and you get a more enjoyable experience because you have those things. Another big factor is extracurricular activities and clubs. Like, I will say one of the things that I thought was kind of a negative about my experience here was that I didn't have a lot of opportunities to do activities within the university, but abroad you will. There's so many different sports clubs and even different levels. You don't necessarily have to play for like the school's official collegiate team. There are club level sports, which are competitive but more friendly. And then there's even intramural, which is just like hanging out and playing games with your friends. You know, what you would do on the weekend playing soccer with your buddies, you just do it as part of this group. And that's a formally organized thing. So there are all sorts of opportunities for you to get into these student organizations and clubs. And I think that that's something that is kind of lacking here. If you're thinking about studying in Peru, like, you just kind of go to the classes and you go home a lot of times. There are student organizations, there are activities, but they're fewer in number, and they might not represent your interests. And there's not always a good mechanism for creating new organizations and distributing information about them. And then in contrast, like I was helping somebody recently with an essay to Syracuse, and we looked up their list of organizations, and right on that page, not only are there 170 organizations in Syracuse or something like that, but they also had a button that was like, register your own. Don't see one on this list that you like, make one, and we'll publish it right here. I mean, that's awesome. They're basically saying, yeah, create your own organization. We'll publish it here and advertise it for people and help you make more connections, more friends, and form more social groups for the things that you're interested in. So I feel that if you study abroad, you have more opportunities to engage in the activities that you really enjoy. And that's something that you won't necessarily have if you stay home. Because unfortunately, the reality of the developing world is that we're just trying to get the basics done right. We're still working on doing education properly here in Peru. Okay, we're struggling with that. So your university is just like, okay, can we teach a good class and have good professors and like good classrooms and good environment? Like, can we just get the basics? And then abroad, they're way past that, right? They figured that stuff out years ago. Now they're looking at other things they can do to make your life more enjoyable. And so you got the advantage of studying in a place that has advanced further, that has had more time to sort of figure out the basics. And so they can spend more time thinking about those extra things that here they're not priorities. You know, you got to solve your basic issues before you can worry about those other things here. So I think that's another big pro, is just that ability to do the things you want to do, whatever those things are, you know. Start an esports club, start a club for a sport you like, or just for a group of people like you. And you can do that over there. It's something you could do here, but it's just not as easy, you know? So I think there's a lot more pros than there are cons. And if we talk about that list, it's even some of the cons can be minimized and can be seen as pros in some cases. So I feel like there's a lot of good reasons for you to study abroad. And the biggest obstacles, of course, are just, you know, academic and financial. And if you can get over those barriers by hard work, then you can get through that. And even I should say the cost thing is something that can be overcome by working while you study. You know, international students can work on campus in the United States. If you study in Europe, they give you permission to work, Canada too. So between financial aid and just part-time job, you can probably pay for a lot of your schooling and not have to worry as much about the cost factor. There's a lot of ways that you can pay for university without going broke. And so don't rule it out just because of cost. I feel like a lot of people look at that con and say, no, it's too expensive. I can't do it. It's impossible. And the reality is, with a combination of efforts, you can make it possible. You can do it. And I had to wait until I was able to have work and a program that let me study at the same time. It took me some time to find that and be in the right place at the right time for me to study, but I was able to do it. And so if I can do it, anybody can do it. That's how I see it. I'm not special. So yeah, that's what I want to talk about today. It's been fun. You know, I think these are the kinds of experiences people need to hear about, because it's going to be different for everybody. This is just my singular experience in Peru as an international student, but I think a lot of the same things will apply to anybody going anywhere. Like, you're always going to have to deal with being a little homesick or feeling a little lonely sometimes, or, you know, not being as in touch with your old friends and family as you used to. Those things are always going to be there. You're always going to have to spend a little more money to be abroad. There's a few things that just apply to everybody, regardless of where you go. But the pros definitely outweigh the cons. There are more pros than cons, and I think that's why it's worth doing. That's why I believe in what we do here at SCORE. You know, we try to help people make this a reality, because we know that it's possible, and we know it has a lot of benefits for people. So, you know, do it. So what else is going on around here? Yeah, I'll tell you guys real quick that we got fresh content coming up for this week. We got our last video from the United States, kind of our last one, not exactly our last one, but kind of. I've been doing all these university videos, and I got one coming out Thursday. That's our last one from my final visit in Florida. And we'll probably be taking a break from some university for a while. We're working on queuing up some more in Europe. I'm hoping to maybe do a Euro trip and hit up some universities there. So that would be really cool. If there's any universities that you guys are interested in, you should tell me, because I'll try to make that happen. We got people reaching out and making connections. We also going to be getting back to some of our regular programming then Like, I got some how to study in blank country videos coming up that are going to be cool. We got some other just general application advice stuff coming up, because we are in the middle of application season now, people. It is on. Like, some of the first applications went out at the end of September. We're getting through some more. We got October 15th is a big day for applications. November 1st is a huge day for applications. Then we're going to have more coming down the pipe. So we're going to be hitting people with some advice on how to handle those applications and things. How to study in Russia, says Gustavo. Yeah, it's not a terrible idea. Other people have requested that. We got to do that someday. As my great-grandfather is Russian, or was Russian, I guess I have a little bit of an influence on that one, I suppose. A little something there. Yeah, fun fact about me. Great-grandfather was Russian, came over on the boat and all that. So he barely spoke any English. I barely knew much about that guy. But yeah, until I was about 10, he would buy me a toy, give me $5 every time I saw him. So he was a cool guy to me. Yeah, so yeah, I got a little bit of Russian in me. It's a very complex issue as an American, to have some Russian in you. I feel like a traitor all the time. It's tough. But yeah, so that's what it'd be. I don't know if y'all got anything else you want to see, but I think we're going to call it a day here. So it's been fun. Finally, we got things working. Feels good. Good internets, good sound, good everything. So I'll see you next week, my people. Take it easy.